Hello. So, like many people, I saw the Odyssey a few weeks ago, and going into it, I really didn't know a lot about the Odyssey. I obviously knew a bit about Odysseus' story, and I also did read a few chapters in high school, and we had discussed it. And then, honestly, a lot of what I knew about it honestly came from watching the Percy Jackson series. But I did remember going into it that one of the central themes that we talked about my freshman year was hubris, or this idea of pride, and how that pride ultimately hurts Odysseus in the end. You know, the verse, pride cometh before the fall. And that's really what Odysseus is learning through his journey home, on top of a lot of other lessons. I'm not going to sit here and say the Odyssey isn't more complex than just that, but that is one of those lessons that Odysseus is learning throughout the Odyssey. And of course, watching the movie, I'm keeping this in mind, and then a Taylor Swift song pops into my head, as it does. And the Taylor Swift song that popped into my head was Marjorie from Evermore. And I feel like this could be a little bit surprising, just in the sense that Marjorie is obviously a really beautiful song about Taylor's grandma who passed away, and the lessons that she taught her, and the fact that even though she's not here physically, like, she's within her heart, and she remembers all those important things that she learned. And so I think ultimately the song does have this beautiful lightness to it. And associating with the Odyssey, I do think is pulling a little bit on those ideas in maybe a more dark way, and in a way. So what made me think of it originally was, you know, those verses. Never be so clever you forget to be kind. Never be so kind you forget to be clever. Never be wield such power you forget to be polite. Never be so polite you forget your power. So this idea that you have to balance your greatness with also being humble, treating people with respect. And that's something that Odysseus is learning throughout the Odyssey, and like ultimately how he ends up getting home even when his shipmates aren't able to make it home. He is taking these lessons of his hubris and his pride and what that does to him. And so the first thing that really did make me think of this idea was the Trojan horse, which the movie opens up on what the Trojan horse was, and Odysseus ultimately having a lot of guilt about it. And I've seen some like discourse online, like, no, in the book he didn't have any guilt, but I think that that would be a really realistically something that you would kind of go back and forth on. Like, I had this amazing idea of sneaking into Troy, kind of betraying the rules, Zeus's law, and what it means to take care of a neighbor, because we gave this offering, but it was a trick. He was so clever, but in the end he did forget to be kind. And when he's seeing everyone just slaughtering the town, the city, and it's, you know, not just the military who's being hurt by this, it's the people who live in Troy, and that kindness is gone, and he's living with this, I don't even know if it's regret, but just this remorse for what his great clever idea caused. So he's already kind of balancing that. And then when we get to the Cyclops, which is the first stop in the journey, and let's just remember that he thinks he's going to get home faster, he's so clever, that he goes in the opposite direction, and that's how he ends up on his way to, I believe it's Hades or hell. And he gets to the Cyclops, and that's where he's so clever. He's able to get most of his men out of the Cyclops' cave, but again, he forgets to be kind. And I do think this one also really hits on that never wield such power you forget to be polite as well. Because instead of escaping and leaving the Cyclops alone, he has to turn around. He has to show that pride, has to show that power. He shoots the Cyclops one more time, and he ends up, the Cyclops is son of Poseidon, and Odysseus and his crew is cursed the rest of the way. So this idea that he has been focusing on his power, focusing on his cleverness, and now he's being haunted by that. But then when he gets to Cersei, if that's how you pronounce her name, that's where his men, they forget to be polite. They come in, they basically use Zeus's law. They say, you have to let me in. And in the movie, they're definitely pretty polite about it, but still like expecting to be fed, kind of not being cautious. All of that is what ultimately gets them into a lot of trouble. Whereas Odysseus finds a way to connect with her and finds a way to convince her that she should let these his people let his people go, let his crew come with him, and he's kind of learning to be clever but with kindness, to wield power but while also being polite. He has a hold of her sister, but he's also not only wielding that, he's wielding this compassion and this care. And yes, in that sense, it is probably more manipulative because he wants to escape with his life and his crew's life than just him like doing it out of the kindness of his heart, but he is learning that. And so I think you do see that throughout this journey, him like kind of battling with this idea of cleverness, power versus kindness and politeness, and where do you fall on that, and what is most important in how you treat people, how you treat your neighbors. You can be proud of yourself while still also being mindful of everyone else and your neighbors. And that's what's falling apart in the Odyssey. That's what's the end of the Bronze Age, is this idea that things are just, people aren't treating each other how they want to be treated. They're not treating people like they might be a god in disguise, and that's the danger of it all. And then when you go into the chorus of Marjorie, it's, what died didn't stay dead, you're alive in my head. And Odysseus is haunted throughout this entire movie. He's haunted by Elliot Page's character. He's haunted by the deaths of the people of Troy. And so this whole time he goes to Hades and he's reminded that these people either sacrificed for him or were sacrificed because of his cause. And he also learns that politeness, cleverness, when it came to the main soldier who went home and then was murdered, that he can't just walk in and wield his power. He needs to walk in and show some humility, be clever, but also be kind to the people who have his back and figure that out. So, not necessarily kind, but just like mindful and not just coming in like you're a big shot. So again, it's that hubris. But I do like this idea that he's also being haunted throughout his journey. And I mean, that's why he keeps eating those lotus flowers and stays with, plane, stays with that other witch. I'm sorry, I'm not great with the names. For as long as he does, is because part of him wants to stop being haunted, and instead of embracing that and using it to help him move forward, he's letting it really haunt him and bringing him down. So this idea that then at the end, you're alive in my head, you're singing to me now. It's like when he finally is able to kind of start to right some wrongs, that's when things start to go back into place, and he is definitely a different man than when he left, but he's just learned a lot on this journey. And yeah, I just think that the main thing that he's learning is that balance of power and politeness, cleverness and kindness, and what that means when you're against people but also for people, when you're battling the outside forces, but also when you're trying to convince your crew of something, trying to take care of the people that you love. So yeah, I was just like, wow, Taylor Swift has a song for the Odyssey, and it is Marjorie, in my opinion. People probably have come up with other ones. After seeing the Odyssey, and this is just a bonus one, I also went and I watched Interstellar for the first time, And Taylor Swift does have a song for this. I'm not going to elaborate as much, but I was like, invisible string, with the connection of the father and the daughter, and he's gone, but he's sending her signs. And then it's like, oh, there was an invisible string that was tying them together the whole time. Beautiful. So, yeah, Christopher Nolan movies actually could benefit from a Taylor Swift soundtrack. Who'd have thought? And that's really all I have to say about that. Bye.